Thank you for your question. Actually, I have two answers to that. The first is, what was the inspiration behind this story? According to the director, Miss Oliver Chan Shukun, she said that one day she saw, when she was just waiting outside her home, she saw a man who was in a wheelchair, and it was obvious that he had a platform behind that you just put. It wasn't part of the wheelchair. It was something he added on, took the effort to add on, and then she saw his domestic worker on that platform, and she said that she suddenly felt uncomfortable. She wondered what was their relationship? Was it something special? And she wanted to explore that theme. And then she caught herself, and she criticized herself for even thinking, for even feeling uncomfortable at what she saw, and that started her process. So that's what she mentioned. Now, what you did say is that, what you did mention about Filipinas in photography, that is true. The story wasn't based on one or two or three people, but I would say that there are quite a number of Filipinas who are working in the domestic service industries who are also accomplished photographers. So there's Lian Hidalgo, there's Saisa Cruz Bacani, and a host of other women. And not only have they been recognized and receiving awards internationally, they are also, while keeping their day job as domestic workers, they are also empowering other women and teaching them how to explore their talents in photography in particular. So there are a lot of women who are excelling in different fields. However, the story itself wasn't based on any one of them. Thank you.
Kasi it's like I just viewed the eyes of my father, who was paralyzed 16 years ago. And sobrang nakakaano siya. All throughout the film, I think I cried like 5 to 6 times. And parang, I don't know, and I watched Baby Ruth Villarama's documentary about yung domestic helpers din sa Hong Kong. Sunday Beauty Queen. Sunday Beauty. And nayak din ako doon. And ako kasi like, medyo soft spot ako sa mga ganitong kind of films. And actually, right before I woke up, I didn't really know what to watch. Ngayon sa Cinemalaya kasi like, tapos na yung mga gala nights. And then I watched the trailer of Still Human. Tapos parang titignan ko pa lang sa YouTube, parang shit, parang naiyak na ako. Kasi parang it's like story of my dad. And I just like my dad. Kukwento ko lang, like yung dad ko kasi like nakapunta rin sa graduation ko, and it's paralyzed din siya from waist to downwards. So like, I just want to say it's a really good film, and I think more Filipinos should watch this.
Before I give my question, I just want to say I was extremely moved by the film. As someone who's passionate about storytelling, and yeah, my name is China because I was born in 1997 when Hong Kong was turned over to China from Great Britain, and yeah, and my mom also worked there for like 30 years of her life and is still working there. So as far as storytelling goes, I just want to say thank you, and for your portrayal also, thank you. Because every time I get to go to Hong Kong and like meet different kind of Filipinos there, from domestic helpers to teachers to flight attendants, people in the travel business, all of them are working hard towards something. And very true to the promise, the film was able to capture 50% of Hong Kong Chinese life and 50% of the Filipino story. So as far as storytelling goes and collaboration with the writing, I'd just like to know if you knew the process of how you were able to marry these two sides of the story. Did you also consult with Filipino writers? And yeah, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing and for your question, China. How was the process of making this happen? Empathy. Empathy, a lot of empathy. When I read the script made by the director, Miss Oliver Chan Shukun, is also the writer. And you know, when they first showed me the project and I read about it, I was wondering, oh my goodness, it's another person who's going to try to make our story. I wonder if it's going to be this extreme or that. Is it going to be over-exaggerated, or is it going to be poverty porn? And then when I read the script, I realized she did not just do proper research. She did not just listen to people. She empathized with us. And she wanted to break down the barriers and see, how can I relate to these people? Because these people are just like me. And I think that was how she was able to capture this story. Now to get the facts right, she did a lot of research. By the time I read the script, a lot of pretty much everything was in place. All I had to do was share my feedback as a Filipino, help explain to the team or the cast why some areas were a bit unclear to them in their context. For example, why does Evelyn have to work so hard to get an annulment? Because in Hong Kong there is divorce, but in the Philippines there isn't. And all those kinds of issues that a Filipino understanding our context would be able to share. But basically the process was there. As for the stories of the women and my character, when I first got to Hong Kong, the first few years I was involved in community work, specifically with the women working as migrant workers or domestic workers in Hong Kong. And many of our projects revolved around empowering, listening to their stories. And so for quite some time, for the 11 years that I've been in Hong Kong, I've been hearing their stories every day. And I've realized there's nothing much that differentiates their hearts from ours. We all feel the same thing. We all go through the same problems. We all have issues with our families, with our husbands, with our children. And so I was always having all these kinds of facets from all those stories from them. And finally, I've had a chance to share it. So the character is bits and pieces of all those stories I've collected over the years.
I see. That's very terrific to hear. Thank you so much.
Was spread out on Facebook. It was an open casting call, and it landed on my message box. And after first time I saw it, I said, just like Evelyn, not good enough for this. And it kept coming, and I said, you know what? Why not? Let me go and try. And when I got there and I got to talk to the director, I realized she had a beautiful vision and she was going to treat our story with respect and integrity. And I said, I want to be part of this process of reclaiming our narrative. And so it's a passion project.
And how long did you shoot the movie?
We shot the film for 19 days within 28 days, which is pretty intense, considering we had a lot of scenes, we had a lot of technical issues, and we were shooting actually in the middle of winter. And you know that scene where I'm out in Central in a very flimsy top? That was actually one of the coldest days. It was so windy that during the takes they would lift up the cardboard boxes so the wind wouldn't reach me. And the makeup artist was was trying to make me look tired and stressed out. And I said, you don't have to do anything. My lips are really blue right now.
So in aspect?
I think the most challenging aspect was the emotional strain. It's painful. It's painful to go through, most of the story up until the parts where she's regaining her confidence and strength. There were really tough times. So emotionally, it was draining, and physically exhausting. We had long hours because we were on a very tight budget, and we were shooting most of that cramped apartment in a basement, and it was dusty, it was damp, it was cold and very uncomfortable, but we got through.
Okay, any more questions?
Had everyone in the waterworks, so I guess everyone would agree that perhaps someone cried 5, 6, 7 times, or like towards half the end of the film. I have a couple of questions. The first question is this. In the process of creating the film, have there been any coordination with the Department of Labor and Employment? Because I think, personally, this film should be seen by everyone who's in government. Because, as you said, empathy, but compassion and everything else that goes with it. Now, my second question is this. You have an amazing, amazing, amazing chemistry with Mr. Anthony Wong. How did you, and I'm not saying that in any other way, but it's like more, for me it appears more like a mentor-mentee, father-daughter relationship. But how was it like not working with him, but what was your dynamic when you would do these emotionally charged scenes? So those are my questions.
Thanks, Tisel. Good to see you.
Yeah, pleasures.
With regard to the first question, in terms of liaising with the government, that's probably a question that Siu-kun would best answer, but to my knowledge, there was not a lot of pre-production work, liaising pre-production.
Yeah.
And but I do know that after the film has been released, at least in Hong Kong, a lot of government branches, as well as representatives from the NGO sector, have seen the film, and it has been a great platform to jump off into dialogue. With your second question, working with Anthony Wong was such a great pleasure. He's very professional, and I think with a lot of very seasoned and professional actors, you're just there in the moment. To be honest, we were all so tired shooting that in between sets, if you're asking how the dynamic was, we were all taking naps. So, but when we're on set, you switch it on, and it was just such a pleasure to work alongside somebody who could you could really connect with and really give emotions back and forth with. So that was good, and he was very patient.
Oh.
He was very patient. It was, at least for me, it was a different medium, and the whole crew was very patient and very supportive.
Pretty much.
Filipino domestic workers, or Filipino actually workers in general. So how was the feedback from Hong Kong, from the people of Hong Kong, for the film?
Thank you for your question, Raj. The feedback was wonderful. We would, I work in a school, and we have a lot of caregivers who come, and they're Filipino, and I was bracing myself because I was so scared. What if they can't relate to the character? What if they say you don't represent me? But they all came and they said, we can relate. Maybe not for the whole story, or maybe not the entire character, but they said snippets of the story, of the character, of the scenes would evoke memories for them, or something that they could relate with. So I'm very happy. I'm very happy that they've accepted it and said that this is their story. Thank you for listening to the story. There are, as of the start of the year, there were 240,000 Filipinos in Hong Kong, and 210,000 of them are our fellow Filipina migrant workers. And just having their stories heard and on this platform and reaching out to people, I think it's overwhelming, and I hope that that's something you can take with you this evening. And thank you very much, and let's continue this discussion, this discourse, because there's so many more stories that we can share.